USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Edge for Friday, February 3rd, 2023. Each week we handicap and prognosticate some top games of the weekend. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Get your tickets now at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. As usual, 5 games on tap in this week's podcast, each one in a different league, and we're going to dive right in. Quinnipiac -125 at Harvard -105. What a great matchup. And the over-under 5.5.
Fantastic matchup. I mean, this might be of the week. We have some good games on the slate this week, but this might be the best. A huge game in terms of what the ECAC standings will look like at the end. These teams aren't separated by a lot. I know there's games in hand. But I look at, Harvard, this is their only game of the weekend. They will play the Beanpot on Monday. This is a big game for Harvard. They have to be pumped to play this one. Quinnipiac, they're coming off a dramatic victory in the Connecticut Ice Tournament, winning a game that they trailed after 2 periods, found a way to come back, score a tying goal, and then the winning goal in the last minute. Impressive. But I think that this is, talk about a battle. Nobody's thinking about this one because there's so many good teams out there right now. Everybody's thinking about where's Minnesota, where's Michigan, where's Boston University? Well, I'll tell you, where's the game this week? It's at Harvard, and this is the game to watch.
Yeah, I am beyond excited for this game, just in general, in terms of what it means to the league, what it means to the national picture. As the guy who covers ECAC, I have no problem admitting that this is kind of my Super Bowl right now at this time of year. When you look at these two teams and you look at what it represents and what it's represented in the context of ECAC needing to come back from getting absolutely creamed by COVID. Last year was a bad year for the league. This is kind of if this game turns into the classic that we all hope it will, this would be a really big statement for the league on the national image when you have 3 teams that are likely getting into the tournament right now. I will say that the edge, if you're looking for it, is infinitesimally small, and so from a betting standpoint, I wouldn't touch this one.
Is that a word?
It is infinitesimally small. It is. You can't come up with a difference in this one. So if you're picking it's one of those. If you're going to pick them, pick the home team, pick the team that's ranked higher. I would stay away from this one in terms of a betting standpoint. Maybe I tease the under in this one at 5.5. I feel like it could be. Feel like between these two teams, there could be an under. Low scoring tends to favor Quinnipiac, so that's why I'm going with Quinnipiac in this game. But my God, if you don't even want to bet and you just want to sit back and watch a hockey game this weekend, this is it. And if you're in the Boston area, go to Harvard, go to Cambridge. I'm not even going to say go to Boston, go to Cambridge. I would venture that this game may be better than any of the games on Monday at the Beanpot.
You ignorant slut. That's all I'll call you. Harvard's athletic campus has never been in Cambridge. Unless they move the Charles River, Harvard's athletic campus is in Boston. So go to Boston for one thing. Watch this game. Good Lord. How did we raise you?
It's on the proper side of the river. I know. It's on the Boston side of the river.
On the Boston side. Don't even
I don't know.
This Cambridge. Stop. Just don't talk anymore.
People's Republic.
I think the over-under is interesting here. 5.5. This is one that I look at the 2 goaltenders, the way they're playing. It should be an under. You said you would tease it. What would you tease it to? 6.5?
I'd tease it to 6.5. Or even another half goal. I'd even go to 6. 6.5.
So you're now giving away a lot of money.
Yes.
Tease that to 7.
If okay.
Right? You're giving away a lot of money on that tease. You need to mix that with something else. I think that just a straight bet, pick your team. whether it's Quinnipiac or Harvard. Quinnipiac's 125. You might not get Quinnipiac this low again this year. And then Harvard minus 105. I mean, okay, give them $5 away, but that's a good bet too if you think the Crimson can win on home ice. This is full-time score. This is not what's happening in regulation. This if either team wins in overtime or a shootout, that counts as well. I love Harvard here.
So here's kind of my counter argument to it is Quinnipiac played much better against Harvard. They won that game 4-1. It was about a month ago. That was on home ice. The home ice advantage here. Right? It was an empty net. Yeah. So it was, but Quinnipiac was the better team. Now here's my thing about this game, and this is kind of where I'm coming from. I think Quinnipiac wins this game. I think Harvard wins in Lake Placid. So if you were to take these two teams and put them out there, because I think it's very hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, I think Quinnipiac's going to win this particular game. And I think just because they had their hiccup, Quinnipiac did, when they played Colgate and Cornell, I don't think they're going to go in and start losing, 3 of 5 games, 4 of 6 games, whatever it is. I think they're going to win this game. But later on in the year, I think this is going to be one of those. It's going to be a lot closer than even the 3-1. I could see this, going the way that it, a 1-goal game, even more than a 2-goal game with an empty netter. I could see this 1-goal game straight up. But later in the year, when they play in the postseason, which I think, unless Cornell throws a monkey wrench into it, those 3 teams are the class of ECAC right now. If Harvard winds up playing Quinnipiac in the postseason at Lake Placid, I would take Harvard in that game. But I'm going to take Quinnipiac right now.
Okay, that'll be a few episodes down the road before we talk about that. How big does that 4-1 loss on January 7th loom for Harvard? How much do they want revenge for that?
Tons. And more importantly, I understand the makeup of Harvard and how much they like to go into the Beanpot on a high. So that's something you have to factor in, is that they don't want to lose the game before the Beanpot, because they want to have some sort of a mental positive going in. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. They're probably a 500 team in the Beanpot over the last 10 years. But the game before the Beanpot semis. All that said, they want to beat Quinnipiac. They understand where they are in the standings. They understand what this means. Listen, this is Harvard's league. They're the pride and joy of this league when you really think about it. When you think about the draft picks, all of the stuff that Harvard has, this is one of those games that as a team for Harvard, how much this means. I know that Quinnipiac does too. I know Rand Pecknall gets his players up a lot. But I think that this is one on home ice. Harvard, I just like Harvard right here.
What would be hilarious? Just from a hilarious standpoint, this game goes out is, just an amazing hockey game, like one of those that you're left at the end of it. You wish it could have gone all night. And then somehow out of thin air, Dartmouth wins on Saturday. Just Dartmouth beats Quinnipiac on Saturday. You have such a letdown up in Hanover. We're talking about the Beanpot. We're talking about all this. There's still that extra game. I'm just saying, I think that to me would probably be that wasn't what they drew up. Like Quinnipiac gets the 3 points and then gives away 3 points against Dartmouth on Saturday. It won't happen that way, but it's, I just think that would be hilarious. That's my own personal humor.
Well, in any case, it should be a great game, and I don't expect that Bobcats fans will have trouble getting tickets at Bright Landry. In Hockey East, Connecticut is plus 115 at Northeastern, which is minus 145. The over-under is 5.5. Jim, we talked about how Devin Levi has become a brick wall. A game Tuesday night against Boston College where the Huskies were a bit outplayed, but Levi came up huge.
Fantastic the way he has played of late. And that's what that does. If you're anybody that's trying to pick against Northeastern, you have to consider the goaltender right now. And Devin Levi right now, he's on a heater. Played really well against Merrimack the weekend before, especially at home, a 1-0 shutout. Then he gets a 2-1 game against BC. The only goal that goes in is a random redirect, a heck of a redirect. Let me put it that way. But you still have to look at it and say, this kid's playing so well all that said, a hungry Connecticut team. They were not satisfied losing to Quinnipiac in that Connecticut Ice tournament. They know where they are in the pairwise. They know they're a bubble team. They were also, if you kind of followed along this week, they were impacted the most by Stonehill being knocked out of the pairwise, the RPI, by the NCAA committee. People have taken Stonehill out, so now anybody that played Stonehill, that's right now it's only LIU, but UConn played LIU. UConn would have had a couple of extra points in the RPI. Because of that, they have now dropped out of the pairwise in terms of being below the bubble. So if you think that Mike Cavanaugh is not going to have his team ready here, he will have them hungry as anything going on the road to play Northeastern. Single game, Northeastern, they're going to be looking ahead to the Beanpot. A weird game, in my senses, because both teams have so much on the line. Jerry Keefe knows where his team stands in terms of making an NCAA tournament, maybe not making it. So Mike Cavanaugh, same position. A lot on the line on this one. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this matchup almost as much as the Quinnipiac Harvard game, because at the end of the day, Quinnipiac Harvard's between two teams that, even though it's a huge matchup and even though there's huge implications postseason wise and league wise, this one has some huge national implications in terms of teams with their national NCAA dreams. So I don't like the Connecticut is plus 115 here for Northeastern. If you're a Northeastern bettor, there's something about those odds that when you go on the road, I think the odds makers, when they look at this, like, there is that slight advantage, which is Northeastern's been on the heater. It's at Matthews. But if you look at the two head-to-head matchups,
yeah, exactly, they beat Connecticut
twice. But I can discount some of those. One was at Fenway on ice that was not great. It wasn't great ice. It wasn't the same type of ice they'll skate on at Matthews. And two is the opening game at the arena down at Stores, Toscano. And so I think when you start getting back into Matthews Arena and you start getting into what is more of a traditional, unemotional regular season setting, and we can make it strictly about hockey without the other junk going around, I actually really like Connecticut in this one. And feel like they're starting to right the ship a bit. I feel like that edge that they had that they lost when they lost those two games. I felt like the LIU games weren't good. At least the overtime game. The loss to Merrimack was bad. Losing to Boston University didn't help. The loss to Cornell was a bad loss. I think the UMass series helped them out. Even the loss to Quinnipiac, kind of, you could see, even though they lost the game, that they just had that little something back that Northeastern has it in the back. I think they've played really well, but I think UConn's got a bit of an edge here. I will say this. I love having these big games before the Beanpot. That is probably because it didn't always feel this way. Like, there were always games that didn't feel this way before the Beanpot.
I feel like the league, Hockey East, has done a better job of making these games, these single games, more important. We've seen it over time. Even Lowell's going to play Boston College this week. That for BC, that's a huge game. I like these games. Harvard's in the same position where it's a massive game, and Northeastern's in a position where it's a massive game. Like, you can't overlook this game. And maybe as a coach, you actually appreciate that. Because if you're playing, dead last in your league the day before, 2 days before your team, or 3 days before your team, I guess, is going to go into this tournament that is such a highly vaulted event, you'd actually rather have more on the line than less. And I think that for every team, Boston University, maybe they don't have that. They're traveling to Maine, but you're traveling to Maine. That's a really tough trip. So every one of these four coaches is probably saying, hey guys, we have a lot going on right now. This is a lot to kind of think about. The Beanpot means nothing if we don't get past Friday night.
What about the over-under on this one? I mentioned Levi in the opening of this. Does UConn need to put up a lot of goals to win, or can this be a 3-2, 2-1 win for the Huskies?
I hate this over-under in general, because I feel like UConn is good enough to score goals, but Levi's good enough to keep them out, especially the way he's playing right now. So a 5.5 feels too low. but at the same time, like 5.5 for me, I hate that number. I just always kind of hate that. I realize I just talked about 5.5 with Quinnipiac and Harvard, but I don't like 5.5 as a number. I'm going to hate the 5 even more when we get to that a little later. But that's one of those where 5.5, that one actually could go under. Like it conceivably, this conceivably could hit 5. I'd even go so far as to say this one could hit 4 and someone wins the game 3-1. But if UConn's piling up goals and Levi has an off night, I mean, this would be a lot easier to say 3 weeks ago.
I just don't see how UConn gets to 4. So let's say UConn gets to 3. Now you're talking about to get over. You're now going to have a 4-3 game for Northeastern. If I had to, somebody puts a gun to my head and says you have to bet this over under, I'm going under. I see, Northeastern has won a lot of really close games, low scoring games, a 2-1, a 1-0 their last 2 times out. UConn, I guess let's go back to what they played against Northeastern. What was it? Or a 3-2, 4-2? No, 3-2, 4-3. So I guess it's kind of hovering around those numbers. I just on Northeastern's ice and the way that Devin Levi is playing, I look at this as a low scoring game. 3-1 is the number that's in my head, but I don't have a difference between 3-1 Northeastern and 3-1 Connecticut right now. If I had to pick, I'd go with Northeastern.
Can we throw out there that Devin Levi, the best thing that could have happened to him is apparently giving up 8 goals against Harvard, because he's been unreal since then. Like he's been a very, very good goaltender since he was hooked for 8 goals against Harvard.
Was he in for all 8?
He was.
He was, yeah. So yeah. I mean, that is one of those nights, But that was when Northeastern was also trying to get. I believe they were coming. They had 2 senior D coming off injury that didn't look themselves. Freshman D played massive minutes that night. This is a healthy team right now, and when this Northeastern team is healthy, watch out, good team.
We're going to take a pause. We'll come back with 3 Western leagues when Uscho Edge continues. We're sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to help your team rule the rink? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, go big for every goal. 2, when you bring it, bring enough for the whole class. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
We're back with USCHO Edge. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. This is the one blowout for the odds makers that we have on the list this weekend. Wisconsin is a plus 240 heading to Yost to take on the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan minus 305 and a big over-under at 6.5.
I love Wisconsin's value here until I realized that Wisconsin, since Cole Caulfield has left, has won exactly 1 road game in the Big Ten. That's ridiculous. That's kind of a weird anomaly stat right there. They're just bad on the road. They're not good in the Big Ten play on the road. So as much as I would love to take a plus 240, let's go plus 240. I'll throw, pizza money on that any day. Nope, not touching it. They are too much of an underdog. If I had to pick this one, it's going Michigan my way.
We all know who I took here. I mean, why wouldn't I take Wisconsin?
You pick Wisconsin, right?
Of course. Yeah. Well, here's my thing though. Yes, they're due. They're due on the road. That's a terrible line of thinking.
They're due. That's they're due. Dan, they're due.
The one thing that concerns me is that I did feel that Wisconsin was going to beat Michigan. I think I actually had that one. That the great December Dan took Wisconsin and it worked out. Or maybe it was either that or it was January against Notre Dame. I thought it was the Michigan game that they won. But you know what? It's one of those things where they do play each other a lot. And, Michigan didn't. I mean, they swept last weekend. They played really well against Penn State. I think there's a little bit of a letdown factor in there. This is all really kind of stuff that you can't take and you can't measure. But I just kind of got that feeling when you go back to the Minnesota series, they lost the first game. When you go to Ohio State, they lost the first game. You go to Michigan State, they lost the first game. You go to Wisconsin, they lost the first game. Yeah, they swept Penn State last weekend, but given everything, there is a direct line that Wisconsin could take in here. It's not a good bet, I'll tell you that much, other than the value. But if Michigan doesn't come out of first gear on Friday, that's throw caution to the wind for Wisconsin's got nothing to lose here.
I'm very sorry for your family that Massachusetts legalized sports betting. It's not a good bet, but that should never start a sentence.
The only way I'm hitting that sports book is if I see it. The closest I'm coming to it's from looking at it from across the river in the skyline. That's it. I'm not going anywhere near that. I'm not touching this stuff with unless I'm using your money, Jimmy.
No, you're not. Over under 6.5. I'm hammering the over here. I think this could be 8-2, 6-3, whatever. I don't have a problem with 6.5 here.
Did you just stab a voodoo doll, by the way? Because I just got a cramp immediately after saying that. I don't know. Did my Michigan voodoo doll come back?
Jim, you mentioned pizza money. That's more like $20 today than $10, right? Pizza money.
Yeah,
$20.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, $20 might be a good investment. Then you can buy
on
2.5 more pizzas
on a 240. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, that you're going to make, probably somewhere. I can't do the math that quickly.
If you bet $20, you'll make 48.
48. So $68 when you leave. I mean, it's a good pizza.
Yeah, it's 3 pizzas and maybe some, some of those like cinnamon roll things that they drizzle stuff on or something like that.
3
Churros.
3 pizzas in Rochester. In Boston, that might not be 2.
I was going to say,
and there'll be better pizzas here too. But anyway,
shout out the meat lover pizza I got in Vermont one time for like $10. It was the greatest thing on the planet. Anyways,
there you go. And it's now probably 17. But Michigan, to me, their stock continues to rise. So that last weekend against Penn State. Right now, you talk about that team. Adam Fantilli, the freshman, 40 points. He's averaging 1.82 points a game. That's more points per game as a freshman than Eichel had when he won the Hobie Baker Award. So, of course, his name's tossed around a lot in that. And Luke Hughes finally seems to have taken that next step. He's going to be ready for the big show next year. But, he exploded last weekend. He is doing terrific, 1.15 goals a game, and 3 other players with 10 or more goals on that squad. I don't see Wisconsin being able to withstand that. So the over for sure, if you're going to do something on that one, right?
I love the over. Yeah, for sure. There's no chance you're going under. I don't even know how you could go under. And you mentioned Fantilli, at 40 points in 22 games. I try to make everything relevant to the best performance we ever saw, which was Paul Kariya. And Paul Kariya did it in a game, in an era where his team scored 6.5 goals a game. Right now, Fantilli is doing, much better, phenomenal things statistically. But, when you look at teams and what his team is doing, goals per game, you're talking about, I just want to make sure I have this right. Less than 5 goals a game for Michigan, 102 goals in 26 games. Goals per game, that's in the 4.5 range. So you're talking about 2 goals less. And, Fantilli is probably averaging basically, less than a goal less than what Paul Kariya, or less than a point less than what Paul Kariya did back in 1992-93. Kariya, I believe, was about 2.5 points a game. And right now, Fantilli, doing the math, He's about 1.81 points a game. I mean, you're talking about it's hard to score and it's hard to put up points right now. So when you can do that, those type of numbers, and I know that Jack Eichel did the same thing, back in 2014, 15. You do that, you have to get some real good looks for the Hobie Baker.
Absolutely. And maybe we could do some over under on that at some point too, for the Hobie and some point spreads if they do put lines up on that. But we'll move on now to the CCHA. Boy, this is a close one. Michigan Tech is minus 120 at Bemidji State minus 110. And this is the one with the dreaded over under of just 5.
Yeah, I positively despise the over under here because, well, one, if you think about it, last week both of Bemidji's games against Lake State went 3-2, so that's a push. The week before, you can easily get to a 3-2 game, no problem. If at some point if you hit no empty netter, like boom, you're done. So 5.5 would have been a number that I'd look at and say take the under. I don't know how you take the under on this one on a goal count of 5. There's going to be more pushing than there is going to be. You're not going to get a 2-1 game out of these two teams. I just don't see it. Not when Michigan Tech's, you look over the last couple of weeks, they scored 3 against Ferris. They scored 7 in 2 games over Northern Michigan. They scored, easily scored 3 against St. Thomas.
They scored 7 against Northern, but allowed 1.
Right.
So both games, one game would have gone under, one game would have pushed. So don't get too high on that. That's the problem, is that these teams don't give up a lot of goals, either one of them.
That's fair. I will say this though, Bemidji's been leaking lately. I'm taking Bemidji here partially because it's in Minnesota. It's not on the UP and the Upper Peninsula, but Bemidji's been leaking a lot of games lately. So that's kind of where they don't allow a lot of goals, but they've had no problem scoring 2 goals against almost everybody, and have had trouble keeping the puck out of the net the last maybe 3-4 weeks. And that Bowling Green weekend, they gave up 9 over 2 games. They gave up 5 to Northern Michigan. They gave up 5 over 2 games to Lake Superior. And this is not the whole under here is based on, these teams don't give up a lot of goals, but Bemidji has in the last month. And if I think Bemidji's going to win, then Michigan Tech, this is either going to hit 5 or it's going to hit the over.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan, when it comes down to it. I'm just kind of making fun of Michigan Tech, the fact that they don't give up a lot and there's not a lot of goals scored in their games. Even if they score a ton, it's a 3-1 game, 4-0 game. I think that it's Tech here all the way for me. I know this one's kind of close because it's in Bemidji, but no, this is Tech here all the way. Bemidji is not playing well right now. Their numbers prove it. They're losing to not so good opponents. I don't think Lake State is good. I don't think that Northern's that great. I'll give Bowling Green a lot of credit, but they lost 4-2, 5-2 to them. Right now, Bemidji's just not playing well. So for me, it's going to be Michigan Tech, no doubt. Over under, I'd still probably go over. I don't know. I don't love this.
Here's a number for you though, and bear in mind, I pick against Michigan Tech. Michigan Tech in true road games this year, 9-4-1, and coupled with the neutral site, they have 11 wins away from Houghton. That's pretty good. I do think this is kind of a weird road trip for them and a tough road trip. It's a long ride, and I don't know that it's only 300 miles, 350 miles, but it's like an 8.5 hour bus, 7.5 hour bus ride, because it's not a direct shot. I mean, this is a tough roadie for them to have to come down, travel through Wisconsin, then go to central Minnesota. That is not an easy trek to make. Not that there's an easy trek from the Upper Peninsula literally anywhere, but this one's tough.
Well, let's look at our last contest. Western Michigan minus 135 at Minnesota Duluth plus 105, over under of 6.5. This one seems to me maybe closer than it would have been before last weekend's sweep of St. Cloud State in Duluth. Western Michigan is playing strong too, but Jim, we talked with Scott Sandlin on our Spotlight podcast earlier in the week, and he seemed pretty upbeat about his Bulldogs.
Well, healthy Bulldogs. right? That's the most important thing about this Minnesota Duluth team. It seems they're healthy now. Home ice, a good team at home. I have no problems with Western. I think that Western has done a lot of things really well this year. Pat Ferschweiler has this team playing as well as he can. I still would favor the home team here. The one thing, you get some value. For another thing, you get a team that has played well at home of late, and that those games matter to me. And this team on the road has not been good. They've been pretty good in that building. Amsoil. I will never say it right. Amsoil, I guess. But yeah, good team at home. I would take Duluth there. Over under 6.5 is high. I'd still probably go over.
Yeah, I'm with you.
NCHC, you're going to go over, right?
Yeah, NCHC, you just bet the over and sit back and enjoy the 1988 Oilers. But we look at last weekend, right? The St. Cloud series, and we picked Duluth because there was like, there's something there that we couldn't put our finger on. We just kind of trusted that Scott Sandelin would come up with something, and we didn't have a great reason other than we just liked them. So now we have a reason, and that's it. Home dog. They were home dog last weekend, but home underdog, playing a team that's not as good as St. Cloud. Western Michigan's very good, but not as good as St. Cloud, and a team that's starting to get hot in Minnesota Duluth. For me, that's Minnesota Duluth. That makes the bet easier than it was last week. And last week to me was a bet that I had no problem making. So I'm gonna take that. And you're right, the over. They're hitting the over. I mean, take the over until it doesn't hit the over. That's the NCHC.
You talked the over last weekend, 5 goals and 6 goals for Duluth. They only scored 5 goals one other time this season. We know Western Michigan scores in buckets, but they were blanked on Saturday by Omaha.
Yeah, that's not happening again.
Don't worry about that. It's
not
gonna happen again. Yep. Definitely not Friday. Let's put it that way.
So, all right, I'm going to throw one more into the mix here, Jimmy, because we're not going to be able to do this before the weekend. You get 2 games this weekend on Monday. Who are we saying plays a week later in the Beanpot Championship? If you had to make your picks, let's give the full Eastern bias here for me and you. We got the Beanpot coming up on Monday. Who you got?
So let's see. It's Northeastern, BU, Boston College, Harvard, correct?
Yes.
Just to make sure I have them correct. I am going to lean. Oh, this is tough. I'm going to go with the BU Harvard title game.
Okay. That feels, you know what? I'm going to go the opposite way. I think Northeastern's going to win on Monday.
I listen, I don't think that won't happen. Listen,
I think Northeastern Harvard
well enough. I would love to say a Harvard Northeastern championship game. That has never happened in the 69-year history of the tournament, which is still the craziest statistical anomaly that we're ever going to come across in sports.
Well, what was it, like 30-something years in a row that BU either won or played for it? Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You have never had Boston College. You have never had Boston College and Boston University in the Beanpot consolation game.
I was going to say, you're stealing my thunder here because I was going with, I think it's Northeastern Harvard in a week.
No, it's not. Come on. 70 years says you have to have something going.
70 years says somewhere Snooks Kelly's sitting down going, that's not happening.
How about Coney Weiland? I mean, let's get there. If you want to go there, Jack Kelly, we've seen it all. We've seen all of it. So
all 70 years tells me is that they're due.
So that's where Dan thought he was going with that, but he's not. It will not happen on this one.
Well, with that, we'll stick a fork in this edition, the Eastern Bias edition of Uscho Edge, sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Find our podcasts at uscho.com/podcasts or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. I can't call these guys what a guy called them on Twitter. They're my friends anyway. For Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Edge.